So this is like the nature of change.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like something arises out of the unknown, out of the unexpected, a thought or, you know, and it just came out of an idea that I had. I was just realizing that with the nodes being in these more in the mutable signs and going into eclipse season, how this dynamic uncertainty, I love that word, dynamic uncertainty that we're living inside of right now, creates like this effect, like a snow globe, or shaking it up. And then when the eclipses settle, when we're on the other side of eclipse season, we'll be in cardinal space. And I was saying, you know, like this is the purpose of the mutable signs, to shift the energy, to change the energy, to be the dynamic uncertainty that changes the way of thinking and the way we believe about our reality from one thing to the next.
And that just I think what inspired me to pull out my phone and record this is when I hear that, it actually brings me into the sense of peace, that mutable is existential by its very nature. Like Sagittarius, Gemini, Virgo, Pisces, they're not meant to be settled. They're not meant to be like final and, you know, like this is the answer, this is what life's about, this is what I'm doing. Like, you can examine that with every single mutable archetype. It's actually never ending,
Right.
inherently. And to be in this transition right now where there's so much strong mutable energy in the middle of this Venus retrograde, and we're still in the beginning phase. You know, with any retrograde, before the planet meets the sun, that's the first half. And then once the sun is conjunct that planet, that's like the midpoint of that retrograde. Actually, is that true for outer planets? Well, it's true for Mercury and Venus. I have to think about whether that's true for... Anyway.
And so in this particular time period, it's like things are starting to get shaken up, you know.
Yeah.
The evidence of change in the air is so clear, but yet the reality of what life might look like is totally unclear, except moment by moment.
And so this need for security, for finitude, finalitude, can really tempt us to want to create order and sense out of everything. And I just don't think this is the time for that. I don't think we are to appreciate that our ideas and our thoughts don't necessarily need to be conclusive, but they're ideas and their thoughts. There's a lot of creative idea, a lot of perspective, a lot of new information. I'm just constantly learning on this journey that I cannot trust my own conclusions.
Right. And that's the...
regarding anything, truly.
Trying to find certainty in chaos is like looking for God. You know, it's like God is in everything. And if we're looking for certainty in all these, in one particular aspect of any of that chaos, it's... the ground is going to be shifting. You know, our ability to actually perceive what is really happening. It's like the teachings that encourage one to look at things through the mind of God was like that. That's so much more challenging during a period of time where it's unsettling, because what's really happening is God is like revealing a reorganization before our eyes. But if we become conclusive, like you were saying, about what's happening, we might actually miss what's really happening. Yeah.
I was thinking earlier today, this is actually something I was writing down in my journal earlier. You know, the Great Dow does not solve problems. It doesn't heal sickness. It doesn't explain things to you. Every aspect of our mind that is held in confusion, the resolution of that confusion isn't some kind of answer, isn't some kind of like, this is the right diet for you, or this is your purpose, or this is how you should behave towards this person, or this is the right solution for this particular situation. These are all profoundly circumstantial, and it validates this premise that we create in our minds of what the problem is. And truth just doesn't operate in that way. And so our framework of perception, like the starting point for how we're thinking about our life and where we're going, something I've been thinking a lot about is I've had these dreams my whole life about a certain diet. For many years I've been having these dreams about a certain dietary path. And I just caught it like a couple weeks ago, that even though I've been told certain things, and it's felt like really clear and strong guidance, to get honest with myself and realize I don't know. I've like an angel can come down from heaven and say like, go to New Jersey, and I don't know. Like, that's an interesting perspective. You like that one.
Yeah.
Ella likes that one. How do we know what we know? And this is by no means staying in this indefinite relativity.
Right.
All perspectives are equally valid. No. The whole point here, like, no perspectives are valid. Like, they're all equally invalid. I like that. I feel a deep sense of solace and peace in that. And that it allows me to not take seriously my own perceptions. It allows me to practice a reference point for who I am and what's happening now, for how I am engaging in life, that is beyond what I can conceive of. It's beyond what I can cognitize. Cognitize?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of being comfortable in the unknowing right now.
As a practice, and then changing, our orientation towards the lesson that life is given. Like, I think of retrograde periods always as like the beginning of the period we're shown the lesson. And then during the period we work the curriculum, we get as far as we can with whatever that lesson is. We go back over it again, we complete it, and then we're able to move forward, And in the uncertainty of being inside the lesson, you can take the stance of like, I know this, and if you've gotten it wrong, wrong, but yeah, it's like, for me, my mind is so conditioned towards the past. I have to be in constant remembering that that's not what's real, and that's not what's right now. And letting go of all the reaching for the past that feels comfortable, secure, familiar, or even in a self-deprecating way. Even in a way that is actually can be hurtful. Like, that's where I feel like forgiveness has come in really powerfully, to be willing to release those orientations, and experience what's here right now. And yeah, I feel like that's a big gift of a retrograde period, to do our work. So it's like maybe all the the sort of advice to not sign contracts during retrogrades and not,
Yeah.
you know, it's like if you threw all that out the door, it's more a matter of actually just being with the present moment and the changing nature of reality. And like how our emotions can shift moment to moment, not making decisions, you know, while you're in God's, you know.
And it's
Yeah.
such an important teaching. You know, it's like just even putting astrology aside, because we have to be able to. It's a beautiful luminescent glare behind your head. You have to be able to recognize these teachings in life as just natural, and you know, anytime we're confused, anytime we're in a process, and it doesn't necessarily mean like we're even conscious of a process, but we can feel energetically if it's happening up there, it's happening in here, you know, and we can feel energetically that sense of there's something unfolding right now, right? What is the nature of this time? What wants to happen? What wants to be experienced right now? To be that authentic with it is very radical. It's actually very there's a certain, like, I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for is. Radical is sort of the word. It's it really sets one apart from not necessarily others, but from condition.
Right.
To really live in that way where the reference point is what's wanted now. Like that's what I did today. Like we just ate an early dinner, to call it that. But it was the first thing I ate all day. And all day it was sort of this active inquiry. Like, does food want to happen? Like, is my body hungry? Is it? And I just felt this deep fatigue. And I couldn't think of eating food without the thought of getting really tired and sleepy. So I just went with that. And I, at some point, like, there was a deep fatigue that just, like, overtook me. And I lied down on the couch for, like, 30 minutes, kind of in and out. And when I woke up from that, I felt much more balanced. And then in its own natural timing, you brought up the idea of eating food. And as I'm preparing food, I found myself getting excited and creative about it. And like, oh yeah, I can really enjoy eating this food. And it's like my association with eating food at that moment was one of joy and nourishment and excitement. Prior to that moment, I couldn't authentically get myself to this place where like eating food felt exciting to me. And so often I found that I've judged that, or I've forced that, like, we have to eat food, or your blood sugar, or da-da-da-da. But there's something about really yielding ourselves to what the path is. And to consider the fact that in the schematic of human history, where we are right now is you know, so different than where we were 1,000 years ago. If we think of like our awareness or our innovations or technology, right? And where will we be in 1,000 years? Like, we have to appreciate that we're still in the dark ages relative to what is yet to be realized, and the ways that we tend to think, to use the word archaic, and not to, maybe it's the wrong word because I don't know what archaic. I think ancient people were probably a lot more advanced than us. But there's a certain way of thinking that is like old and conditioned and not checked. Right, not considered. I think that's a big aspect of what retrograde's all about, especially all these retrogrades happening in Capricorn. You know, it's like, check yourself. We dig holes for ourselves, and we get inside of it, and we say, yep, it's exactly what's supposed to happen, and we don't check it.
Well, this is one reason the patriarchy has, you know, survived, or capitalism, or colonialism, any of those mindsets which are actually like thrive on the basis of unquestioned thought, unchanging, you know, subservience, dominance, like all of those things. That's the beauty of this mutable energy, especially in Gemini Sag, because the ability to become questioning of thinking and questioning of belief systems inside of a change which disrupts all that Capricorn energy, which was like the dominant theme of last year. And here we are in 2020, and it's no part of this year has been what people would think it is. Today is, the day before Memorial Day, and it's like that the way we would have celebrated that holiday in years past can't even exist within the way time and space is right now, and what human beings are experiencing. And yet we wouldn't question those holidays or question the significance of the disruption to the systems that we're inside of without that mutable energy, without the gift of what chaos brings to, returning our hearts and minds to a completely new way of living inside of life. And that might mean like eating dinner early in the afternoon and just enjoying life in a different way.
Sadie?
Missing the medicine of the moment. Oh, this came up when I was noticing like all these during retrogrades, disruptions or like challenges that are happening in relationship. And I think the thought before was about how like jumping to conclusions, like about what's happening. This is what's happening. You skip over actually what's arising in the moment for healing, in the disruption. And that's the medicine of the moment. It's like trying to get out of the uncomfortable place too soon is a way of just bypassing the gift that's being given, especially in the most disruptive, like the idea that when the disharmony is at its greatest, then the longing for harmony is also at its greatest.
What was that quote that our friend shared yesterday about love and disharmony? And
that when disharmony is arising, if it's met with our harmony, a greater love will be left behind.
So a greater love is left behind after the disharmony, if met with harmony, than before the disharmony. I mean, I love that. Yeah. I love that. I mean, of course, like, love couldn't be greater or lesser, but I just, like, I get the message as, like, more accessibility to the truth, like, the essence of love. What's real becomes more available and expressed and realized and livable. And it's such a forgiving perspective.
And it like puts the human being in the position when disharmony is arriving, like when the fight is happening, when, the person is triggered, like bringing my harmony. I'm choosing to cultivate more love by showing up and meeting whatever's arising with as much love and capacity as I can bring to that moment. I mean, I think of it as in terms of, I don't know, something came up and I was triggered, and in that moment of being triggered, vulnerably sharing, like, okay, in that moment of being triggered, you made the choice to hug me.
Oh, you're sharing a nice story. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's exactly what happened. More love came out of that moment. Because instead of my being in conflict with you, becoming the reality, you made the choice to bring more harmony to that moment. And everything, I remember that moment so clearly because every cell in my body that was like screaming with rage and wanting to be mad and wanting to be like, ah, there was a moment in your embrace that I felt the fight leave me, and I felt peace return to my nervous system. It was like a complete breakthrough, because all of my old patterns would have told me to fight or flight, like, right, to
Right.
run from the conflict in the relationship, to, decide that the truth of whatever the trigger was greater than the reality of the love that was present. And so when you made that choice to bring harmony to that moment of disharmony, it created a breakthrough in which I was able to actually access tenderness and vulnerability, and love was able to return to that moment in greater proportion than it had before the trigger happened. And it was such a powerful thing for me to realize that actually there was enough safety that could arise, and that healing was happening right before my eyes, that an old tendency was actually dissolving in the presence of this choice. And that was the medicine of the moment. And that's what I'm saying by, like, if we try and jump to conclusions about what's happening, like if I had decided that my trigger was right in that moment, and you had decided that I was right, or that what was wrong was real, and not responded with harmony, with the choice to just reach out for connection, I think the beauty of that healing would have been lost. I mean, I can't know whether that'll happen or not.
No, it's too theoretical.
But in a way, like, we got the medicine of that moment because of that choice.
It's so beautiful. This just makes me consider, my battery's about to die, so we'll go as long as we can. That truth in the presence of illusion is something you can't ignore.
Right.
And how uncomfortable it is, like if we can access a remembering of love, a remembering of truth, which is always available, right? Like what's true is always available. If we can access that in the midst of thoughts that are not real, that are contrary to unity and safety, that thought is often initially met with resistance, be it within ourselves or if we're offering it to someone else, and them, it doesn't matter what direction it's being shared. There's just this initial impulse of resistance because the temptation is to be so identified and to hold on and to possess the direction of disharmony as real. There's almost like a sense of gratification of, like, I'm going to benefit by these negative thoughts of hurt, attack, ill intent, distrust. Like, I'm going to benefit from that if that's real. So I'm going to, like, make sure that I hold on to that. As weird as it sounds, it's weird. When we actually think about it from a sober mind, it is completely insane. And that's why there's always the possibility of love dissolving that. And I had that thought, like, why is it that when harmony restores the presence of love, it's greater than it was before the disharmony? Is because it was like a little bit of a cleansing.
Yeah.
Right? It's something that was already inside, and this just moved through. Like, it's not like everything's great, there's something bad happened, now we're back to great again. It's that everything was great on top of unconscious dynamics that are just waiting in time to be purged. And that's a Pluto thing. Pluto is, we're going to evolve and shit's going to come up. And so, yeah, it's, you know what? Venus is grace, is beauty. And this conversation just reminds me that in the midst of uncertainty and not knowing, when I find peace for that, when I find that it's okay to be where I am, and that everything that I feel or what is not known is like here, there's like a little bit of an opening, a little bit of a space for
Joy.
giggles. There we go. And creativity and play and beauty.
Yeah.